two more questions for you.
Okay.
I actually have so many questions, but there's two on the top of my head.
No one ever wants to talk about the elephant in the room in dentistry. I realized very quickly I was not a good communicator. In dental school, the worst advice that we were given was this. They told us that the patient was here and we were here.
What does it mean to build your domain, and what does it take to really get you there?
Every catastrophic failure or bad result that happened once started out as a really good idea. If you could undo the worst mistake you've ever made, do you think you might be a few steps ahead?
What would you recommend to set themselves up for the best success possible?
If you want better answers, you have to ask better questions.
Right.
This may be the most important thing your listeners are going to hear. To get to this place where you can do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, it comes with a mega sacrifice.
Dr. Jon Marashi, welcome to Doctorate Domain. I want to ask you before we get into everything, for the person who's watching this video right now and about to hit the skip button, why should they stay?
Because I'm going to show your listeners how I went from being a broke-ass dental student to dentist to the stars to achieving $1 billion exit.
Love it. I love it. All right. Well, I hope that you keep listening. So, let's start with the entryway. When you were just a dental student, before the journey entering as a co-founder of Byte and entering all this success and seeing celebrities as patients, who were you before all of that? And what did you think you needed to learn in order to get to where you are today?
I wish we could flash a photo right now, because I have this in my presentations of when I was 23 years old, first year dental student, NYU.
Yeah.
Glasses, braces, pretty bad complexion. I mean, it's the most unflattering photo in my entire life. You would not have bet on that kid.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and my wardrobe consisted of purple sweatpants. That was about it. That was me in New York City at age 23.
Complete parallel opposite.
Yes. And I walked in there with an undying belief that if I was willing to literally roll up my sleeves and work hard every day, something good was bound to happen.
Yeah.
That was my belief system going into dental school. Crazy thing is that I thought maybe I want to be an orthodontist, because that was the only way that I knew at that time of how people could get a beautiful smile. And I didn't have braces as a kid. So I got braces right when I got to dental school. So I'm like, time to fix my stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then I saw my first cosmetic dentistry lecture, and that just opened my world. And that was from Dr. John Calamia. And, for those of you listening, it's a familiar name because he's, the godfather of aesthetic dentistry. Is the guy who figured out how to get porcelain veneers to adhere to teeth. Guy did the research in 1981 with his partner, J.R. Simonson. They did the research, figured out an etched internal surface on the veneer with a silane coupling agent was the secret ingredient. Prior to that, these things didn't stick. Anyway, I saw that, and I knew right then and there, this is what I was put on the planet to do.
Wow.
Is to give people beautiful smiles, give them their confidence, and now I just had to figure out how to do it.
That's interesting. So is that what led you to become a dentist? Or when you were graduating dental school, did you kind of have a picture of what your career would look like?
No, it's the other way around. So as a kid, there were only two things I wanted to do my entire life, as long as I could remember. It was going to be a dentist or a professional skateboarder. That's it. Mm-hmm. And the way the cards fell is probably for the better, right? Professional dentist and amateur skateboarder than the other way around.
Yeah.
And my whole life, I just turned 52 last month. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. I started skateboarding at age 12. So I'm 40 years in on it, longer than I've been a dentist, and still having fun with it. So becoming a dentist, I always thought it was something that was cool. I liked going as a kid. We didn't get to go often, but it just seemed like I liked working with my hands. And when middle school hit, oh my God, I was obsessed with smiles. The girls that had braces, to me, it was like work in progress. It was probably borderline pathologic, but just seeing these were going to move and it was going to look beautiful. And then there was this element of, because my family didn't have money where I could get braces. So I was like, ooh, it's very aspirational.
Yeah.
And hence the first chance that I had to get braces myself was getting to dental school. So
That's very
It's interesting, how it all tied together.
Yeah. And, this is one of many stories where we have a founder who really built their empire from hardship. And it was like as if that hardship is their fuel, and that is how grit develops. And, we could talk more about that. It's very interesting, but that is a common theme that we find in founders where nothing came easy. And, I would love to ask you your journey with Byte as co-founder and a very successful journey.
Yeah.
Did you think, when you were starting that journey with Byte, did you think that there was something missing in dentistry that it led you to co-found this company?
Let me tell you how it goes. So you ever hear the saying, if you want better answers, you have to ask better questions.
Right.
And I was at a point in my private practice where, I've had a good run, right? I became Dr. Fancy Pants. And I started thinking about what I do every day. And it's like, I'm very blessed. All these people come to see me and, celebrities and so forth, and they're willing to pay a lot of money for it. And I started thinking, what about everybody else?
Yeah.
Because, no one ever wants to talk about the elephant in the room in dentistry is that number one, it's expensive. I don't care where you are. Yeah. It's expensive. And the other part of it is access to care. Now, what I mean by that is this. It's not that there isn't a dentist on every corner in a busy city. I'm not talking about rural areas. But did you ever think for a second, like, how on earth does a patient come and see you at like 1 p.m. on a Thursday? I mean, I know what I'm doing. I'm working. I can't even go to my own doctor's appointments. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking like, gosh, what if there was a product or a service that could be delivered at scale, that could be affordable, and it made it easier for people to receive it. And that was my North Star on this project. Well, now the old adage, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And a central theme of my story is actually about the power of relationships. And we can take a dive into that later if you like. But
for sure.
Long story short, my neighbor, who became a friend, who became a patient, asked me to go to lunch with him one day, and he wanted to bring his best friend. So we sat down, and they're like, hey, we got this dental idea, and we just wanted to soundboard it with a dentist. I'm like, okay, sure. Tell me. And so, they're telling me what's going on. I'm listening, kind of nodding my head, and thought about it. I said, okay, well, yes, no, maybe like this, definitely this, and I want to be partners with you guys.
Okay.
And that was with Scott Cohen and Blake Johnson, who were the co-founders from Byte. And that's how I got on the founding team.
Okay, so there were two initial co-founders.
Yes.
You joined in as the only dentist, correct?
Well, to start, but then we had other dentists join. We had an orthodontist join the team, Todd Ayler, Todd, shout out, love you. And it ended up growing into quite a big team. But my role in the company was, when you're a small company, when you're starting, the cool thing about it is you can do whatever you want, right? There's no playbook for it. It's just you're trying to figure it out. Right? And so when I came on, initially, we thought, well, maybe I'll just be an advisor because I know something about dentistry. And then I started working on product design with them. And I was like, hey, we should start putting teeth whitening stuff in this thing. And then I was like, hey, I'll bet you I could probably start talking about this. So then I ended up becoming the face of the company in its early days, because part of consumer trust is who's behind this thing, right? Is Byte just the spaceless thing, or is there a dentist behind it and a trusted source?
Right, the credibility.
Yeah, so I became the face of the company, being Doc Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so, that helped, create some legs, and the trust factor definitely improved too, I think, because we started making sales. The early sales are the hardest ones. Founders ask me this all the time. They're like, how do you, your first 100 sales are the most difficult ones.
Yes.
Because they got to be paying customers. Like giving it out to your mom and to your second cousins, they're just gonna, it's like smoking exhaust from your own tailpipe. Like they're just gonna tell you what you want to hear. But if you can get 100 people to buy something that nobody knows nothing about, you're probably onto something.
Yeah, right.
So, in the early days, we were just trying to see what would work. And because we were small, it allowed us to pivot quickly based on trial and error, getting feedback from people. And we didn't have a big market spend at the time either. So because you don't want to,
No.
slam your foot on the gas pedal on market spend when you don't even know if you have the right formula yet.
So from the ideation stage, this conversation with your neighbor, to now
Launching.
developing, or I would imagine that you guys also discussed what the equity would look like, how people are going to, have their stakes in the company, and what each roles would be. And so I'm actually curious how that conversation usually comes about, especially you are one of the dentists that just began as a starting founding member, right?
Yeah.
So how did you go about that conversation, and also achieving what was fair for you as well before getting started with the launch?
One of the most important lessons that I've learned in business is you get what you negotiate, plain and simple.
Right.
And so, when it came my time to sit down and look at a contract, and I had to stand my ground for a while, of like, okay, this is what I think I'm worth with my level of contribution to the organization. The cool thing about a startup from the founder's perspective is that there's this balancing act, right? Because you're trying to retain as much equity as possible in case the thing actually hits.
Yes.
But at the same time, you also have equity as leverage to try to get other smart people on your team. So it's a little bit of a balancing act of like, okay, well, how much am I prepared to give out to bring people on, and what's that going to look like? And I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way of doing it. There's a lot of different formulas. I'm very happy with where I landed. So
Yeah, you get what you
get what you negotiate.
It's true. And you have to know what value you can bring. And I think that comes with time too, right? When we're living our lives, when we're entering our careers, when we're seeing what value we bring to whatever we do today, every single day, right? So that probably helped you gain that confidence to know your worth.
You have to know your worth,
right.
And because that's what also allowed me to say, hey guys, here's what I'm going to bring to the table.
Right.
The interesting thing is that as the company evolved, because we were still relatively small, I saw a lot of white space for me to do other things and things that weren't even my scope of work. But I was like, hey, wait, if I do these things, it's going to help this thing get better, which means the company's going to get better. And if that gets better and this thing sells, then it serves me too at the same time, right? So, value add is really important. And like a specific example of it in terms of Bite was, as we were starting to market this thing and we're thinking about, all right, well, how do we get more people using this? How do we get more, trust into the brand and so forth? And so one of my partners asked me, is like, hey, do you think you can get, all your celebrities to stump for this? And I said, not without giving a ton of equity. And then I thought to myself, hey, wait a second. We don't have a philanthropic arm yet.
Okay.
And they're like, well, what do you think? And I said, well, look, here's the deal. I said, even though we have a low cost option, what about people who can't afford to pay? And I still remember his answer. He's like, well, what about them? I said, that's what we got to do. We need a philanthropic arm because now, it's a great thing to do. It's going to be looked upon favorably, by the marketplace. But it also gives me an opportunity now to actually talk with some of my celebrity clients about philanthropic involvement. And most people want to get behind something good. So here's a great story around it. Ben Affleck, longtime client of mine, love the guy. He's fantastic. His big philanthropic effort that he does every year is with the Midnight Mission. Midnight Mission is an organization in downtown Los Angeles that provides services for homeless people and people who have had substance abuse issues, alcohol. They have a sober living program to help people get back on their feet. So Ben was in the office and I said, hey, do you mind telling me what charity you're working with these days? He tells me about Midnight Mission. I'm like, this is amazing. So I told him about what I was working on with Bite. I said, is there any way that we could get involved with this to help the people that you serve? And he looked at me and he goes, dude, that would be amazing. Are you kidding me? He's like, people who are trying to re-enter the workforce and they can't even smile confidently in an interview. He's like, even if we could whiten their teeth, that would be a win. So we went down there and did this whole thing with Ben, with some of the graduates of the Sober Living program. And what was interesting is that year, it ended up being his #1 liked post on Instagram. At that time, I can't remember like how many hundreds of thousands or whatever the count was, but it was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
And People Magazine picked it up and they did a story. And, all we were trying to do is find a way to help people.
Yeah.
And because of the relationships that I had, I was able to use that to help people in a way that I never even thought was possible. And it was a mutually beneficial thing too, right? Because, it helped the Midnight Mission. It was good for Ben. It was good for Bite. And yet, had I not had this personal relationship with him, to try to go to an A-list celebrity and say, hey, what do you feel about, being part of this or promoting it? That comes with a big price tag.
Right.
So, we did a lot of things like that, with other celebrities during our journey that helped create brand awareness and trust. And I definitely think, that was a big part of it.
Yeah, I believe in the power of relationships 100%. And I'm curious how that started for you. How did you build these celebrity relationships?
Everybody starts at square one.
Yeah.
You just don't open the door and all of a sudden everybody's there. In fact, when I moved to California in April of 2004, the first person from the entertainment industry, and I was like, I got my break, I'm in. It was someone who was auditioning as an extra, as a mermaid in Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, that's humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And how she got referred to is a crazy story. She was down at a party in Newport Beach not in Newport Beach. My friend from Newport Beach knew her, and they were at the Playboy Mansion, and she got tripped on the dance floor, fell down, broke her teeth, front four, right across, Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
And I got the call at 10 p.m. at night, and my friend Bill down in Newport Beach is like, dude, I need a favor. And he's like, and she's auditioning tomorrow. And there are no pulp exposures. Unbelievable. I took my thumb and just braced it from canine to canine on the back and dumped Luxaflow and cured it and sculpted out teeth, with rotary instruments. And it was just wedged in.
Wow. What a way to prove your artistic talent.
And I mean, it was the Band-Aid of all Band-Aids. But, the point is that, you start with someone who's, pretty low on the food chain, and you do enough of the right things of taking care of people and being there for them. And then one day, maybe you get someone, who's like on the C list, and then maybe to the B. And like, my first real cracking on the A list was Ryan Seacrest. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was like, I don't, how will I even do better than that?
Big deal.
I mean, it was pretty cool because he got referred. And, over the years, we've become friends, and, he calls me at the office, and but he crank calls me, and then I'm on the radio with him, and I have to talk about how he chipped a tooth, gnawing on a pen cap. He's a total working class hero, this guy. I absolutely love him. But, how this ties into relationships is this. In dental school, the worst advice that we were given was this. They told us that the patient was here and we were here.
Yeah.
And that's just so wrong. It should be like this. We were told when I was in school, don't tell a patient where you live. Don't tell them where your children go to school. Stand still when you talk with your hands behind your back. I mean, it felt like it was, I was
robotic.
Like I was getting in trouble.
Robotic.
It was pretty ridiculous. And never sat well with me. I feel like if I'm going to be there every day in my office, and I'm spending more time there than anywhere else, even more than my family, and I have these amazing people who are coming to me, and dentistry is intimate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're in people's space and they have to open themselves up. Literally, there's a lot of trust that comes with it. And I said, God, why would I not want to get to know these people? And what happened is that the place where I spent the most time, which was work, all my best friends on the planet are my patients. And that just happened very organically over time. That's right. And it came, am I allowed to curse on this thing?
Yeah, sure.
Because I gave a shit. I genuinely cared about the people that I was taking care of, and just asking them just simple questions, like above and beyond, hi, how are you? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your life. Where you're from. What are you into? And all of a sudden, you realize like you have things in common with people. And then I just kind of went out on a limb and asked patients if they ever wanted to hang out. Like, hey, let's go to this movie, or do you want to go to this concert? Or, can you bring your family and I'll bring mine? And you'd be shocked. The number of people are like, oh my God, I would love that. And then, here I am all these years later.
Yeah.
I've had people still my friends, and they're like, when you asked, I was like blown away because, patients kind of worry about that professional line as well. And they thought it was so cool that I took that first step, went first to try to, create a genuine friendship.
You did, yeah.
And, that's the secret right there,
Right.
is that because there's no funny business at that point.
Right.
They believe you, they like you, they trust you, they know that you have their best interests at heart.
Yes.
And here's what comes with it. When you have those type of personal relationships with your patients, they go to bat for you.
Right.
They go out of their way to get their friends and their family and their coworkers to come in and see you because they want you to be successful. And it's a really beautiful thing. It's like you have this fan base, literally, of people that are rooting for you. And it's been one of the biggest privileges of my life. I mean, I look at all the things that I've been able to do and places that I've been because of these relationships that I've had with my patients. Sometimes I pinch myself. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I get paid to do this.
Yeah.
And I got to go and do, this and that with so-and-so. I mean, like,
It
I would have
compounds.
paid money for that.
Yeah.
It's and dentistry is so rich, and I think it's the most overlooked thing. And why I hammer on this point is because it was the relationship that I had with a patient that led to my introduction with my partners from Bite. That never would
look
have
at
happened
that.
otherwise.
See?
And the same thing happened with our exit from Bite. Now, this is the greatest story.
I was going to ask you
My
about that.
least favorite thing to do in my practice is doing an exam after someone got their teeth cleaned. It is my absolute least favorite thing to do because I'm in the middle of a case.
Yeah.
There's something going on.
I know. A lot of dentists can relate.
And when I get that tap on the shoulder, I'm just like, oh.
With a
like,
tap.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here we go.
I know.
So, and listen, once I'm in the room, I love being there with the patient, but it's just, it breaks your flow.
It does, yeah.
So I get tapped and I have to go into the hygiene room, and it's a guy that I know. He lives in the Palisades as well. And his name's Chuck. And he's like, Doc, how are you? I was like, hey, good to see you, man. And he asked me, he goes, man, I haven't seen you in a minute. What are you working on these days? And I was in the middle of prepping a case. And so what I thought I was going to say was, oh, family's good. All right, say, do my thing, get in, get out. And something stopped me. To this day, I don't know what it was. And I said, I'm working on this really cool project. And he's like, tell me more. And I told him about Bite. He's like, what's your exit? What's your plan for getting out of this thing? It's like, are you guys looking to sell? And I said, well, when we hit a certain revenue marker, we'd like to, and it's kind of where we think we're headed. He goes, I'll bet you I could help with that. Turns out he was the head of M&As for Goldman Sachs.
Perfect.
In the healthcare division. 45 days later, our deal was done because he connected us seller to buyer, and that's how Dentsply Sirona acquired us for $1 billion.
Beautiful. I want to clap right now. Audience.
And you talk about the power of relationships.
Power of relationships.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Compounds.
It does. And, there are plenty of M&A teams out there.
And you were open. You were open. You were honest. There's probably a component of that I think is also not just chance. And I'm wondering if you think that way too.
I do. I think, opportunity, I believe, is something that passes people all day long. And they say it's the intersection of being ready and having a willingness to be open to things. And that was sort of my whole journey with Bite. It's been my whole journey in dentistry, is just, what are the possibilities? What could I do with this? And also thinking about it in terms of, is it in alignment with who I am and what I represent and how I live my life? Like, how do I want to do things? And, so to have it all come together like that, it's incredibly rewarding. I mean, you feel like, wow, like I did this and I did it my way. And to have been part of such a team with Byte, I mean, it was like capturing lightning in a bottle.
You mentioned something very important, alignment. I think that it's fairly difficult sometimes for dentists to kind of come out of school with that alignment.
Yeah.
We're trained to look at millimeters and in confined spaces. We're working on strategy, methods, diagnoses, and patient care for so many years, right? Yeah. And so I notice a lot of us forget about the real reason why we're doing what we're doing. And a lot of that has to do with self-awareness. I think that we just go in this autopilot zone and we just forget about all these pearls or all these creative suits that we have, these traits that allow us to create.
Dentistry has become a machine,
yeah.
Or there's aspects of it that are machine-like that you can go down that path and be all consumed by just the clinical aspect of it. And what I think people lose sight of, and maybe it's just because of whatever their employment situation is, and it doesn't mean you're working for someone, it could be even in your own practice, is that they think that you have to do it a certain way because that's how it was done before.
Yep.
And I'll be the first person to say, dentistry may in fact have more flexibility. You can do as much of it or as little of it as you want. You can literally do it anywhere you want, right? Globally. Mm-hmm. And you can have your practice philosophy of how you want to do things. And if you're good to people, you generally are not going to have a problem attracting an audience or a patient, right? That is going to be attracted to what your service offering is. But that clinical piece is a rabbit hole because I've seen some incredible people and incredible dentists spend their life in CE and nowhere else. And that's the disconnect.
Yeah.
Because CE doesn't really benefit you too much if you don't even have patients to use these skills on, right?
That's right.
So you have to look at the other arms. Like, number one, I realized very quickly when I started my private practice, I was not a good communicator, not at all. And I was like, I have got to learn how to carry a conversation with a patient to talk about treatment and, learn which words to use. They say, 80 or 90% of all communication is nonverbal. So the words don't even matter, right? It's about body language. Am I talking really slow? Mm-hmm. Or do I got to speed it up? Mirroring. There's all these things that I had to learn. What about the business aspect of it? What about the financial aspect of it? The language of business, finances, accounting. I realized there were things with marketing that I needed to learn as well. How do I get visibility and share my, what it is that I do to an audience, right? So you have all of these layers that we got no exposure to, while we were students. And I don't blame the dental schools on that because there's only so much they can teach you in this window.
Yeah.
But I think the profession has failed us that once you get out, the whole build it and they will come, or just, keep learning how to do a better class 2 composite. And that'll lead you to, a financially sound life. I don't believe in that. And so there's all these other areas that you have to pay attention to, but there's no roadmap for it.
There's no roadmap.
There's not a widely available roadmap.
The key word I'm thinking of right now, I think you have to immerse yourself. When you immerse yourself in these experiences, you get to learn what you're good at, what you're not good at, what is naturally being attracted to you as well, right? So if you lean into those things, but you have to be in a state where you're not completely in autopilot or you will miss those things, right? Mm-hmm. For someone watching this right now who is in their early steps of their dental career, financially not supported.
Yeah.
about to either decide on pursuing continuing education or starting their first job or entering in a business endeavor, what would you recommend they do almost immediately to set themselves up for the best success possible?
Make better decisions. How do you do that? You have to train yourself how to think. How do you do that? You need a different type of education for that. Where can you get it? There's these magic things called books.
Love it.
Or even YouTube.
Yeah.
Everything is for free.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give a plug. The best book that I've ever read that has to do with how to think critically and make better quality decisions. And think about this for a second. If you could undo the worst mistake you've ever made, do you think you might be a few steps ahead? Most people, if they've been alive long enough, are going to answer that question, resoundingly yes. And oftentimes, winning in life isn't about playing offense. It's just about making fewer, dumber mistakes.
That's right.
So my business coach and mentor, his name's Keith Cunningham. He's one of the smartest business people I've ever met in this life. Dude made hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate and oil and cable television in the 80s. And then he lost it all, went bankrupt. And then he spent a few years thinking about life and where did I go wrong? Built his empire back in multiples. And he spent the last, 15, 20 years teaching. And he wrote a book. It's called The Road Less Stupid.
Yeah, I have that
Keith
book.
Cunningham. What'd you think of it?
Because I remember you told me about it. You know what? I think that it's one of those books that you just want to always have on your shelf. And you're going to read it multiple times and get something completely different each time.
Every time.
Right? I remember you mentioned a couple other books at one point that were very beneficial for your personal development as well. What are some of those books?
Oh boy, I can't remember. I'll tell you right now, if I could only have one, it'd be The Road Less Stupid.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I had read Good to Great and 4-Hour Workweek.
Yeah,
and
the classics.
Outliers. And
I have all those
Blink,
books.
And they're all good books.
They're more business savvy books.
But what I realized is that you're only as good as you know how to think.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I really learned how to think critically by asking better questions and carving out time in my life to look at okay, if I make this decision, everyone every good decision is started once. Every catastrophic failure or bad result that happened once started out as a really good idea.
Yes.
Think of it like that. You got excited and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then bad shit happened. And no one ever stops to think 3 steps down the road, what could go wrong?
Right.
Unexamined risk. That's the number one way that people get themselves in trouble.
You have to.
What could go wrong by doing this? And when you start thinking about what could go wrong 2 steps down the road, they call those second order and third order consequences, your optics are better.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm driving on the freeway and around the bend, the bridge is out. And if you knew that before you were driving 100 miles an hour around the corner, you'd probably have a better chance at stopping. So it's just understanding what the environment is and what you're doing and how things could play out.
Yeah.
And you may come to the decision that what you're doing is a good decision, right? But you've thought about it.
You thought about it. You slowed down, you paused, reflected, and you need to do this all the time, quarterly, weekly. It's so interesting. We're talking about this because psychologically, if you do the same sequence of events and you think second order, third order positive consequences, I'm sure that will motivate you as well to take these strategic risks. I like to call them strategic risks because you thought it through, but it removes that component of fear that a lot of people have when they want to start a business or join a venture, do something different, right? Especially for the typical clinician who was trained didactically and clinically to practice dentistry, right?
The fear factor is real.
Yeah.
I've done two different startups, and, each time going into it, I was like, all right, well, I don't know if this is going to work, but I was okay if it didn't, meaning that I wanted to try this, and I said, okay, let's see what happens. I always figured this: if the worst thing that could happen, I'm trying something, it doesn't work, and I got to start over. I mean, think about it, even as a dentist. Let's say you got your own practice, and it's a startup, and it just goes belly up, and you actually go bankrupt.
What's the worst thing?
They can't stop you from being a dentist.
Right.
The bank might take all your shit, but then you're going to go.
Still have your degree.
You still got your degree, which means you can still go get a job for probably still for 6 figures, and you might be practicing somewhere that wasn't your first choice, and you might have a used car instead of a new car, and you might have a small apartment instead of a big house. But think about this. You got an apartment, a car, a 6-figure job. You're living better than 99% of the world.
It's all perspective. Yeah.
I mean, my friends, with the path that I took with doing startups and moving to LA and leaving Larry Rosenthal's practice in New York, they thought I was fucking nuts. They're like, are you crazy? And I didn't see it as risky, because risk is not a bad word. See, everyone thinks that risk equals failure.
No.
There's calculated risk, right? There's high risk, there's low risk. But if you've thought about what the upside and the downside is, then you know what you're stepping into. So I figured, for me, the pain of starting over, which, that example I gave, I'm like, yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem so scary, starting over again.
And speed matters. Speed matters a lot. I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
I actually have so many questions, but there's 2 on the top of my head that I really want to ask you because I know it's going to help a lot of people. One of them is, in this day and age, would you recommend that a young dentist, starts a practice from scratch if they think that it's something they really need to do because it's the norm, versus acquire, versus do something completely different? What would you say to that dentist?
Okay, if it's a binary choice of starting from scratch versus acquire, the only way I would encourage someone to start from scratch is under 2 scenarios. Number 1, they got family money. They have no debt, and they got someone else who's going to bankroll this operation that if shit goes sideways, they're okay. And that's not many people.
Mm-hmm.
Or scenario number 2, they're in an underserved area with demand, because that's your greatest opportunity to have patient flow. What the young dentists don't realize is this. They get it. Look, money is cheap and easy in dentistry to acquire because the manufacturers, the banks, they all want you to build a practice because it's a big money generating machine, getting the best equipment, all this other stuff. But day one, when you open, the only thing that allows you to pay your loan on it, right? Because you got a practice loan now, is warm bodies sitting in the chair. So to spend $500,000, $1 million, $2 million building a facility, and then they give you money, could call it working capital, you borrowed money to pay your loan back. I mean, like, what a dumb business formula that is.
I know, it's become the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're just sitting there hoping that the phone is going to ring. So my risk tolerance for that is low. I think that a business that has a recurring stream of revenue, which means a patient base that comes regularly, is the way to go.
Yeah.
And there's fewer of them now because DSOs have gobbled up a lot of them.
That's right.
But they're still there. And so to the listener, what I would say is it's not going to be as easy as it was 25 years ago where there were a whole bunch of them. You're going to have to look far and wide, and you'll have to manage your expectations. However, in terms of risk, if a practice has been around for a number of years, for it to continue to be successful, really the only thing that you have to do to maintain it and be successful, I'm going to say this again, This may be the most important thing your listeners are going to hear. The only thing they have to do for this practice to continue to be successful is not piss off the patients and the staff. That's it. If they don't piss off the patients and the staff will stay, the patients will still come, and slowly over time, guess what? You can start acquiring more technology, equipment, remodel, all these things. That's what I did when I bought my first practice. I found a guy who'd been there 30 years. The inside of the practice looked like 1972. It had blue carpet. It was like horrible blue carpet, and wallpaper had like sailboats on it. I mean, it was really bad. I didn't care. What I cared is that there was a practice full of loyal patients that wanted to keep coming, and I figured they'd at least give me one shot. They'd say, I'll try a new guy once and see how he is.
Oh my goodness. I have so many questions about what you just said. Well said. That could be another complete podcast, actually, like a business edition. But I want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
So the name of my podcast, I chose, and we go back when I was talking to you about creating a podcast, and I was like, what am I going to call it? And I finally landed with the name Doctorate Domain, because I am interviewing doctors, dentists, healthcare entrepreneurs, and founders. But the word domain came from this inspiration about what it means to truly kind of own this, so to speak, empire within your life and build it. And so that's your domain. So what does it mean to you to build your domain, and what does it take to really get you there?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. I'll tell you why. I think younger dentists, or maybe even veteran dentists, think that the end game is somehow either making the most amount of money or doing the most number of veneers. And that's not the metric of happiness or success. Okay. A friend of mine who's also a mentor told me that his mentor told him, said, you know what the real definition of success is and happiness in this game that we're playing? It's doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want.
Yep.
That's what freedom is. I don't care, if you're working so many days and hours that you don't have time off to take care of yourself, to enjoy a family or friends, or do the things that make life so full and rich. Just being focused on certain metrics in dentistry is never going to bring that level of fulfillment. And so, as I said earlier, that dentistry allows you to do as much as you want or as little as you want. You have to find that balance, that sweet spot for yourself of, okay, how much do I want to work? How much time do I want to have off? More importantly, and here's the part that everyone misses. This is the juice right here. To get to this place where you can do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, it comes with a mega sacrifice. And it took me years to get there. And what I had to give up in my life to get there, I had 2 startups, plus my private practice, plus a wife, plus 2 young children. Yeah. How much time do you think I had in my life?
Yeah. And
so the story that I sold myself was, well, my kids are young and they won't remember. I don't know if that was the right answer or not. No one can really answer that, but that's the choice that I made. And what I've learned about choices and outcomes, there's just choices. You go into it with your eyes open. It's just what you chose. And so I said, I'm going to sacrifice time. I'm going to sacrifice health. I'm going to sacrifice relationships. I'm going to sacrifice my money, because I had to put money into things, right? Because I believe in myself and what I'm doing, that I think I can get this outcome that's going to actually make me happier than I was before. And, I had a little bit of luck on my side. The things worked out, and it's allowed me to have a life with my family and give them a life, give my kids the life that I never had growing up. And so, I'm very happy and proud with the decisions that I made, but they were hard choices. And so, I think for someone coming right out of school to think that they're going to be in St. Bart's and in Saint-Tropez half the year, drinking champagne, like, well, good luck with that. That's, sort of this influencer, the social media myth, like it's not real. You're going to have to, there's 3 things that'll help you get there. Number 1, know your outcome. And you're allowed to change your mind. It's totally okay. But head towards something. Number 2, coaches and mentors, no substitute.
Yes.
It's the fastest way to get cuts to the front of the line. I've done that my whole career, trying to be the fucking dumbest person in the room.
Yeah.
Because that's where learning happens.
Exactly.
And third, and it is not sexy, it's discipline and consistency. Ordinary things done over a long period of time will yield extraordinary results.
Yes.
That's what it takes.
It's beautiful. Well said.
Thank you.
There's so many key pearls in this podcast. I'm really excited for this to air. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I am going to leave Dr. Jon Marashi's information down below so you guys can follow him. He is so kind and so open. He will answer any of your questions if you do have it. And until next time.